Hi, welcome to today's Leaders in Mental Wellness and Diabetes, where you will hear insights from the top minds in the world of diabetes care. Hosted by Dr. Char.
Hi, Daria. It is so nice to meet you.
Hello, it is lovely to meet you as well. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Oh, well, it's a privilege to do these podcasts and to join a community and talk to people who want to help in the space where we've lived all these years, right? So, what
Yeah,
age?
I am actually a podcaster myself, funnily enough. I do run a podcast.
Well, and so you'll know everything I'm doing wrong here because I'm just starting. But we want to talk about that a little later because I want whomever is listening to me to have a wider audience and a wider view of getting help. So that's the importance of this to make sure we get to the world with the help. And as young as you are and as old as I am, I must have lots of experiences where the help wasn't there that you just know how to do when it comes to all this technology. So maybe I'll learn from you as well.
Yeah, I feel there are ups and downs with care in general because even my generation doesn't get all of the tools available, unfortunately, for different various reasons, which we obviously can get into later. But yeah, unfortunately, not everyone has access to all the tools available.
It's true. It's so true. And yes, I have a history of where it wasn't available and now it's kind of worse when people it's available and we don't know how to use the technology or don't know where to go find it. So thank you first of all for doing what you're doing. It's one thing to be diagnosed and it's another to want to go outside of yourself and help others. Tell me about your journey with diabetes.
So I was diagnosed when I was 5 years old, which was a good 17 years ago now. So I don't really know life without diabetes, which is helpful on one side and I guess a bit sad on the other. But I don't think there's a good time to be diagnosed anyway. And bless my parents, they gave me absolutely all the care I could wish for and could ever need, really. I am Russian by blood. So we were back there when I got diagnosed per se, and we actually went to Finland to get it all checked out and to learn to manage it really. So we spent about a week or so in Finland. And then the reason we went there is because someone told my mom that there are a lot of diabetics in Finland. And so their care is really good, which I'm not sure is true, but their care is actually quite good.
Good.
And then we came back and I had all the support I could need, had all my carb measurements done for me up until I was 13 years old, which was when I moved to the UK and I started in boarding school here. And this is when things went really wrong. So, apart from all the mental stress I got because I was absolutely on my own, didn't know anybody, I was sort of this like black swan. I don't know why, but I felt quite isolated and like I didn't fit in really. Maybe because of my ethnicity. So, like, because I'm Russian, maybe I just didn't fit in or people don't like me. I have no idea. Maybe it was just me thinking too much, like overthinking things, but I developed an eating disorder as a result of all of this beauty. And yeah, it was a difficult couple of years. So if you want to classify it, I had sort of a binge restrict cycle, but leaning towards anorexia. So I was kind of binging and restricting, but at the same time, my overall calorie intake was still insanely low. And at the end, it ended up being only anorexia. I was never clinically diagnosed, never admitted to hospital, and sort of just pulled myself out of it. And all of that was topped by excessive exercise. However, I've never restricted insulin, which makes me quite happy. And I just didn't know it had the effects it does. So I didn't know it was a anabolic hormone and that if you stop taking it, you lose weight essentially. I didn't know that, which was very handy. And I'm really happy that I didn't because I might as well have killed myself. And yeah, I guess I went to uni. I did my undergraduate in management with marketing, which is completely like out of anything I am doing now. And this is when everything sort of started to fall into place. I did a course called Daphne. It is dose adjustment for normal eating, I think it's called. It's a course that they offer on the healthcare system here for diabetics to help you manage your diabetes.
Wow.
And it really did help. However, after that, I found funny a podcast called the Juice Box Podcast. I am sure you've heard of it, maybe not.
No, I haven't.
No, I really recommend it. It's a great podcast. It's by a guy called Scott Benner, and he takes care of his daughter. And he has so many tips, and he really brought the community close to me because I didn't know anyone with diabetes. And I thought my control is really bad just because this is diabetes. But then I saw this other side where people actually live and thrive with diabetes. And that's when sort of the doors opened for me and I started taking proper care of myself. And this led me in a short way to go and do a master's in nutrition. And I am
Wow.
planning to go and do dietetics afterwards so I can go into clinical practice.
Wow. That is amazing. I guess the thing I identify most with on a personal level is I did restrict insulin at times. And when I was young, you do it without the brain power to know how damaging it is because it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
And when you're going to binge eat or just eat wrong, I didn't consider it then. Nobody even had the words binge eat, or I hadn't heard them. But when I was going to eat wrong, I could not take the insulin and the weight wouldn't come on, but it would come off. I didn't know what all that was and what it meant, but I was doing a lot of things good and a lot of things bad before I was ever educated on it. And so to hear your journey and to know those emotions. See, when I was 16, I was in Germany. Now, married, mind you, at 16, but I was in Germany. I know what it's like to be in another country, feel all alone. And my actual expectations at that time, I don't know if they were expectations, but I wondered if my new husband, which was in the military, right? I wondered if he would stick around. I wondered if he wanted to go for this journey, because when the doctors talk to you about it, then at least it was dire. There was not a lot of hope and not a lot of things nicely said. So that was my biggest concern. I never equated insulin restriction with losing weight because I wouldn't lose him. It was not that emotional attachment, but it's so good to hear that you've moved out to help others. And it sounds like being helped yourself, you chose some of the same ways. How did that get started for you?
In terms of how did I start my
Your business?
My business, yeah. So at the moment, everyone thinks I'm actually a practicing business, which I am not because I don't have the qualifications yet. And I just right now I am helping people for free, essentially, because I just really feel for them. And I I didn't know all of this and I struggled for so long, and I don't want absolutely anyone in this world to go through anything similar to I went to. And especially we have so much connections available, so much information available, and there is really no need for people to do that. So I'm like very grateful for social media existing these days because it really helps a lot of people. And I have a lot of newly diagnosed people messaging me saying, oh, do you have like suggestions you could give for travel? Or do you know what to do here? What about this? And it's like very different areas. Of course, I am not nutritionist even yet or a dietitian, so I can't give them upfront advice, but I can give them general advice and advice. That's not the right word, but like general suggestions that they could implement. And then through showing my personal journey, I hope that really does resonate and help people as well. But essentially, it was because I just felt there was also a bit of a actually, how this started was I really wanted a personal trainer, but obviously, when you're type 1, they can't really help you. Like, they can help you with the exercise side of things, but when you end up with either high blood sugars during your exercise or low blood sugars during your exercise. That's no good for you. And you just don't enjoy it. And I found that was a real gap. So, as a matter of fact, I first did a personal training qualification. And only then I leaped into nutrition because I thought I can do only so much on personal training again, because you're not supposed to give any insulin advice or any management advice with that kind of qualification. So that's how it went.
The wisdom at that early stage to know not to give past what you have studied is amazing. So this is only my opinion, but I think it's profound and worthwhile. So many people put a title out there, and while they're encouragers, there is so much knowledge needed for diagnosing, for giving certain kinds of information that, wow, my hat's off to you that you recognize that. And while those are not limitations based on your experience, you're making sure that they're not limitations because you're studying, getting whatever credentials you need that not just the world would look on and say you are qualified, but that you know that you're not offering something that you don't know. It is phenomenal that you're doing that. So thank you.
No, I just understand that you don't do a degree to then, like, for it to mean nothing. And also, I understand that this is my personal experience, and this will be very, very different to absolutely any other diabetic out there. And there is really no point of me even giving them advice on what I am doing based on my experience, and that this needs to be rooted in knowledge that's been accumulated by different people, and it really needs to come from a healthcare team rather than one person, because you just can't give proper advice based on self kind of experimenting, really.
Oh, I'm so impressed with you already. So tell me about this podcast. Tell me all about it, what you do, how people get in touch with you, and how that's working already.
So, of course, my podcast is decently small. It's called What Type 1s Eat. And I have actually finished the first series now. It's called What Type 1s Eat because it's all about the different ways that type 1s eat and how they manage their insulin to what they eat, as well as what they eat to help them manage their diabetes. So it's kind of a two-way approach. And I've spoken to various people, from severe carnivores to vegans to oh God, low fat, high carb people, to like whatever, you name it, to everyone. And I just find it really fascinating and how different people deal with their diabetes and how they prefer to do it. And not necessarily I agree with every approach,
Right.
but I just think it's nice to know that there are different options, and maybe some people want to try them, which is fine, but it's good for them to find out for themselves whether it works for them or not. And again, that needs to be done very carefully with different with a professional, really, a clinical professional. And yeah, I wouldn't recommend most of those diets, and really all of them, but it is good to understand that different people have different ways of getting by, and they're there are different approaches for people at different stages of their lives as well. So that what works for someone right now won't necessarily work for someone later on. And at this stage, I'm actually interviewing people for my second series, which is with basically researchers and clinical practitioners in the industry. Because speaking to type 1s is one thing, but then knowing of different research going on and of how diabetes should actually be dealt with is a completely different story. So that's where we're at.
That is so interesting. What about your blog? Does it go hand in hand, or is it separate and individual?
Yeah, it's a little bit of my experience again. So things that I come across in diabetes that I feel are worth sharing, again, in a very generalized manner. And I just think sometimes it's about me expressing myself there rather than creating it for someone, because obviously I live with type 1 as well, and I love writing. It's my way of kind of getting the emotions of on paper, and then something I really feel passionate about, I just feel needs to be shared. So I guess that's the reasoning behind my blog.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good. So tell me how anybody listening today that hasn't met you, where can they find you easy?
www.t1leveldaria.com. That is my blog and website, and I have a couple recipe books as well if anyone's interested. And then my Instagram is at t1level_Daria. So those are my two main platforms.
Well, the cutest thing I have seen in a long time on your Insta was the post about the reactions to the Dexcom.
Yeah, Dexcom
Those
UK
alerts.
actually got in contact with me about that, and we're like, can we repost this? I was like, yeah, sure.
Those alerts, you just have to be in the middle of the night when those alerts go off to appreciate it, right? You just like,
Yeah.
and then the dawn phenomenon, and you've not eaten six the night before, and yet the stinking thing's going off before you want to get up because it's 160 and the thing goes off at 161. I'm like, I was so amused by that, but it brings so much truth that that's why you can't discount your experiences. I love that my little pet peeve is that for me, someone that hasn't put in the work, I went to school for 20 years. I was diagnosed very young, but I was a late bloomer and I went to school forever, but I just never stopped until I finished everything that I wanted to do. And so then when somebody pops up and is doing the work without the work, I don't know what I think about that.
I saw your face change when I said, I don't have the qualifications at the moment, and then it was like, okay, this is going to be better.
Well,
I just saw your face go from like smiling to,
oh, I hope not.
It did. I'm sorry, but it did.
But so my little pet peeve that I have to watch myself is that, because the flip side of, yes, I believe we need to be qualified. The flip side of that is experience. There's nothing better. So when someone is qualified, plus, now that doesn't mean I have to have everything that my patients come to me experiencing. I don't have to have cancer to treat someone emotionally who has cancer. But I will say that there's something about the diabetes world where, especially what I'm learning on social media, that has toned that down in me, because the experience, there's nothing like it. I don't care what clinically you tell me about a Dexcom and how good those alerts are. And I don't care how many times you tell me they're annoying. When a type 1 girl gets on there and does what you did in a few seconds, it resonates. Yes, and truth and funny and a settlement in me. So I think both worlds working together, maybe not for any other diagnosis, maybe not for any other dis-ease, I don't know, but for our world and our community, I believe there's room for all of us, all of those that have chosen just to help, all of those that have chosen just to sell products to make us feel better, all of those to be comedians to make us laugh, and all of those that want the research and the clinical studies and the get the work done so we can know we're not giving anything but the proper information. So
that really does resonate with me. And what I just wanted to add is that there should be a very clear cut between a content creator and someone who actually helps, so a dietitian or medical professional. But they really can't ones can't do the other thing, although I can argue that dietitians can do content creation, but they might not be as good at it, questionably. But the people who are doing content creator, they really need to know their lines, like just not step onto the wrong side, because it's dangerous. It is really dangerous. And there can be people with diabetes who might essentially develop other disorders from it. I don't talk about the complications, but even other disorders, they might even get low symptoms if somebody told them to pre-bolus for way too long, that just, you can't do that.
Comorbidity is such a big field in itself. What is great is how it's growing. I think the teamwork you talked about earlier that we need, wouldn't it be great if every patient had a team specific for them? And this IT world, this online world, the social media world is only going to expand and be more opportunities for more of us in specific fields. So that's something that I look forward to. Like mine's counseling psychology. And so I know that I can't help people with their emotions without touching onto what we eat, because you're emotional when you have 119 opportunities to eat a day. It touches your emotions, so you have to deal with the stress and the anxiety and all that. So I do know we have to touch it, but we have to know where is our place and where are we qualified and where are we good. So thank you for knowing all that already.
Yeah, I just feel I have been part of the social media industry, so to speak, for quite a while. And in the UK, they really take the mick out of you if you're not qualified. So I'm just very conscious of that. And I just also wanted to say that I think if you are acquainted with another type 1 online, it is reasonably fair to discuss their management with them, but on a peer-to-peer basis.
Yes.
So you can't be doing it as, I advise you to do this because I know this is right and I have no qualifications, but I think I have them. You can't do that. But on a peer-to-peer advice, together with them understanding what they're doing as well, I don't see any harm in that. And I think that's where the value of the type 1 community really comes to play, where this peer-to-peer communication happens and we do the knowledge sharing rather than the knowledge giving.
Yeah, there's such a place for we that have a bit of knowledge to add to the body of knowledge. And then there's a place for we who are experiencing and being peers to each other. I agree. There's place for us to share because we understand, but it takes the person that's sitting in your shoes and the person sitting in mine to take the privilege, obligation, and responsibility to know my limitations, my value, what I can give, and where I need to limit that. So it has been a wonderful discussion. I hope you feel the same.
I do, yeah. And I really honor speaking to people like you, because that's where you kind of get the knowledge and get the real opinions, because you've been in care for so long and you really have that experience that I am just only about to gain. And I really respect.
Well, thank you. With the nutrition experts, I have had to utilize my whole adult life, but I didn't have the access to them every minute of any day until recently. I know what it's like to pee on a stick and not have a Dexcom monitor on my tummy. I mean,
I do too, as a matter of fact.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was diagnosed quite before those guys came about.
Yeah, and it's just hopefully it turns to wisdom after a while, but the knowledge of, okay, for instance, the knowledge only my husband knew the times when I decreased insulin for the wrong reasons. Never did I get out and tell someone, oh, to fit in a prom dress, but I've used that example to other teenagers about losing weight for a prom experience. Not in condemnation, but never using my experience to say, I know how you feel. I know where you're at, because not everybody has earned the right to hear my story. So I don't feel obligated to make it about me or to tell them. But this online world that you and I have chosen to be a part of, today, I could honestly say to someone else who has dealt with eating disorders, I could honestly say and not feel shame or anything about that, that I too have. Well, you haven't actually decreased your insulin, but I have dealt with those things. And so, yes, we're coming to a great place. I'm thankful for the place and time that we get to be a part of this. And I'm so thankful and hopeful that you and I can stay in touch, because I want us to stay in the same community. And I wouldn't miss now the Insta posts that you put for anything. But when I have time in my busy world, I can promise you I'm going to go find season 1, and I'm going to learn from your eating suggestions.
They're not even suggestions, to be honest. They're just experiences of different people. Thank you for that. I do feel very, very blessed to have this community these days, because it was really lonely without it. And I wouldn't have had a lot of friends if I wouldn't be part of this community.
Well, thank you so much for doing what you're doing, considering others. And my heart ached a little bit for the little girl that was a young teenager learning to do it on your own in another country, because again, I experienced a little bit of that by myself, because when I went to another country, my husband was there, but then he got shipped out for training. And there I was, couldn't speak the language, didn't know one person. And my mom and dad were what seemed a million miles away in Appalachia, in the side of the world where I had been so limited to even my knowledge of diabetes, much less a world outside my existence. So my heart says you're great, you're wonderful, and thank you for doing what you're doing. And it's more than just head knowledge. I can tell it is your spirit, soul, every part of you. And you inspire me, so I don't have a doubt that you're inspiring others. So thank you so much for what you do.
No, thank you, Dr. Char. And I appreciate that you've invited me on.
Oh, well, thank you. And so as we move forward, I'm going to listen to you. And maybe when this comes out, you can see or hear the podcast, and you can give me a review of how I did, because I'm just banking up my first season.
You are doing awesome. So just keep it up and keep inspiring other people, keep sharing, and all will be great and fine.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's do it together.
Sure.
Okay. Bye-bye now.